time with her in the last 14 years when we moved to San Diego. One of the things we all miss is our mini vacations in her home. I would rather vacation in her home than a Ritz-Carlton or anywhere else in the world, except Singapore, where my mom is. Mom lived her life serving others. Her love was wide and inclusive. It was not limited to her family or close friends, but to anyone whom she knew. She would cook and drive 2 hours just to bring food to someone who's homebound and unable to leave home. Where I grew up, driving 2 hours would mean driving to a different country. So to me, her cooking and her driving showed the extent of her love. Up until a month before she was diagnosed, even though she didn't feel well because the cancer had already spread in her body without us knowing, she was cooking for friends. Her last Christmas dinner took everything she had, but she was unstoppable and cooked a feast that was Martha Stewart worthy. And it has been that way for the last 14 Christmases that we've been here. But she's so much more than her cooking. It's so easy to define her by her cooking. She had boundless energy. Her social calendar was busier than ours. And she has a huge circle of friends, extended family, and neighbors. When she was ill, she had people knocking on her doors, offering to bring her food, running to run errands for her, to bring her to doctor's appointments. It was because she was that kind of friend to them. My mother-in-law was not a celebrity. She was not famous. She was not an important corporate executive. But during her 2 months of illness, she received hundreds of cards. She kept them by her bedside and relished every word. And every waking moment, she would reach out to one of her cards, and she would really enjoy them, and she read some to me. So your love, your cards, and every word that you wrote to her brought her a lot of comfort during those difficult months. She was also honest to a fault. She's one of those, if she hit your car accidentally in a parking lot and there was a scratch or a dent, she would leave you a note with a phone number. She had that kind of integrity. She had no regard for fame or fortune, and whether you're her doctor or her gardener, she respected every person and treated them all equally. She was a friend to the friendless and to the unlovely. She spent time with her cousin who had part of his brain removed and was unable to work for years. She would bring him lunch, dinner, and she would just spend time with him. She visited Nick, a 90-something-year-old widower, when he lost his wife, and again she would drive over an hour just to have lunch with him. They say when you marry, you gain a family. She was one of the best things that happened to me when I married her son. Estee Lauder once said that her mother-in-law told her, when you become a mother-in-law, shut your mouth and open your wallet. She forgot about opening her heart. Nothing can shut an Italian Italian mother-in-law's mouth. She opened her heart wide. She opened her heart wide, and she left me with memories and lessons that no Estee Lauder fortune can buy.
My mom had a brother and sister. We're fortunate to have the son of my mother's sister, Diana Brown, John Brown, here with us today, and he'll read a note from Dolores' sister.
In truth, I'm way down because I represent a large East Coast contingent. In addition to my mom, Aunt Doe's sister Diana, and my Uncle Ed, their brother, Aunt Doe's mother, my grandmother, was in Avalon. And so we had Uncle Eugene, who was Grandma's brother, out in Ardsley, New York. And so I represent also Roseanne and Stephen and Robert, who's actually over in Hawaii, and Ramona, who's actually in Corrales, New Mexico. And then Aunt Doe's father, Crescenzo Guida, had a brother, my Uncle Tony, who had Corrine and Debbie, who are still back on the East Coast, as well as Robert and David, who predeceased my Aunt Doe. And so in some ways, I'm representing all of them when I read you these words from my mom. It's hard for me to write my thoughts about my sister, Dolores, mostly because it's hard for me to accept that she is gone from this life. She has, quote, been there since my first memories. My older sister, my only sister, throughout my childhood and into adulthood. Dolores wasn't just my only sister. She was also special because she was the first grandchild on the Avalon side of the family. And she was the good child, artistic and skilled. She found time in her life to learn to paint, to sew, and crochet beautiful things for all of us, and to be a gourmet cook. I, on the other hand, this is my mom, didn't have those skills or abilities. And she didn't. So as Dolores used to tease me when we were growing up, she was the creative one, and all I did was read. We both, however, in our separate ways, did share a major first. We broke new grounds as the first females in our extended Italian-American family to go to, and eventually, in my case, graduate from college and have both marriage and family and careers. Most important, in spite of all the differences between us, the ups and downs we dealt with, our parents' divorce, having step-parents, acquiring a half-brother, a move to California, my mom's eventual move back to New York, we managed to develop a relationship of love and respect for each other that lasted for our whole lives. Through both the joyous times and some very painful times of loss, in spite of the physical distance between us, and the fact that aging and infirmity had slowly begun to make it harder for us to travel back and forth for in-person visits. And I now find myself struggling not to cut a picture or article out of a newspaper or magazine to send to her, or to pick up the phone and call her to ask her opinion about something or to tell her something that I think will interest her. We used to wonder aloud about what it must have been like for our relatives in our grandparents' generation, many of them illiterate, who came to this country to make a better life and would never see or hear the voices of loved ones again. And the timing of things. If only Dolores and I had learned about Skype a few years ago. And indeed, it's because of Vince that my mom was able to Skype with my Aunt Doe one last time before she died. With gratitude and much love, rest in peace, dear sister, Diana.
I'm going to read something that was sent to me by Ed Guida, my mom's half-brother. My sister liked to tell a story that I was a B-R-A-T, her emphasis. It was a favorite of hers when we were together and we were meeting someone new. The important thing to me was that it was always said in past tense, and she was always smiling during and after her pronouncement. And of course, there was a little boy and brother in me, even to this day, that perversely enjoyed the label. Over the years, I accepted that indeed I was one, since I was a much younger sibling, and my memory of those years was not as clear as hers. We grew up in separate households besides, so we were only began to know each other when we were adolescents. For a long while, we did our adult things in college, working, raising a family. We mainly talked by phone and shared the occasional visit. We lived on opposite coasts. Then that changed. My work took me over to the West Coast and beyond, sometimes more than my body appreciated. So a favorite respite for me was to stop over to LA for a brief visit with Doe before going or coming back from an overseas trip. Funny how life changes suddenly, often for the better, in ways you don't initially appreciate. We started reconnecting, catching up, and easily shared all sorts of twists and turns in our lives. From all of this time together and sharing, we discovered a common interest in cooking, gardens, travel, and towards the end, baking. Now, baking was one of her great skills, and while we were probably equals in cooking, I was her pupil when it came to baking. And in the end of this wonderful relationship, I have nearly perfected her Italian ricotta cheesecake. Little things can sum up a lifetime of joys and tears. I'm going to read one more from her friend, Fran Juster, and then I'll invite anybody else in the audience who would like to say a word or two. This is Francine Juster. Dolores was a very special friend to me. She did so much for me, difficult to enumerate everything. I was without my car for 2 years. Go kept Wednesdays open to help those in need for anything. I was a fortunate recipient of many of those Wednesdays. We enjoyed our relationship. I treasure our good fortune. 60 years. You are in my heart forever. Please rest in peace. Love, Fran.
Thank you, Vince. As Vince said, we want to take a moment and offer anyone a moment who might want to share a thought, feeling, or memory. I'll not belabor the moment, but I don't overlook anyone. Would you like to share? Okay, good.
I don't usually speak because I have many people who can speak for me, who are wonderful speakers. But I am from Flower Avenue, and there are a few people here today who remember Dolores and many others who aren't here today as one of the real rocks of our block. It's a small block, there's 12 houses, and I'm thinking a good 20, maybe plus years ago, Dolores had something stolen from her garage, I think is the story. And she took it upon herself to start a neighborhood watch group in our little block, organized everyone, got everybody's names and addresses, had them people to their house. Of course, she did a splendid job of it. And she did turn that job over to Florence, and Florence's husband Larry is here today. And eventually I was recruited to replace her, and I am what I call the most lackadaisical neighborhood watch captain there is. I go around and talk to people on an irregular basis. We have meetings on an irregular basis, but we have our list and we know each other, and in the spirit that she started us, we do look out for each other. I didn't actually get to spend a lot of time with Dolores. She was way too busy. You all know that. But when I did, I always felt a kinship with her. It was good to have someone on the block who knows about the East Coast and still has one foot there, which I also do. But the most important thing is that she supported me in my inability to organize, in that whenever I did have neighborhood watch meetings, she let me have them at her house. Now, I actually have at my house probably every neighborhood watch list from all the years. I don't exactly know where they are because I never throw anything away, and I am always busy myself. But unlike Dolores, I'm just very disorganized. So I would make the list and invite everybody, and I was amazed that she would say, of course you can have it at my house, which was always had this perfect seating arrangement. Her hospitality was great, and of course she had dozens of cookies in the freezer at a moment's notice. So I thought we were a good pair. She didn't necessarily want to keep the lists and write the notes and get the phone numbers and kind of keep the process going, but she did provide a great home for us to meet in, and always was interested in everyone, always looked out for everyone. She was a great commensurator when there was something else going on the block, and I would always have to go to Dolores and say, oh, do you know what's going on with Eileen, or have you heard from this one? And so the whole block knows and respects her, as I said, a real rock and a special person. And I'm very grateful for her, and now I have to I think I might have to clean it or find someone else to volunteer so I can rush over for the next meeting at the last minute with the balloons and the parties, games and stuff, so we can continue the neighborhood watch tradition.
Good afternoon. Dolores was a beautiful lady, a beautiful mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a friend, and a dolphinette. For those of you who don't know what a dolphinette is, that's the name of our walking class at the beach. Dolores first found out about the walking class while she was shopping at Macy's. She ran into one of our students, Nancy, who told her about this great fun class at the Torrance Beach. On a personal note, after Dolores had joined the class within the first 2 weeks, she fell in the parking lot and tripped on one of the speed bumps and broke her hip. So after we got her to the ER, or the paramedics did, I was asked to go to her house to find her pocketbook with all of her medical information. I found out then how neat a house could be. Trust me, if I fell, my hip would heal before they found my purse. When you spend time in an emergency room with someone, you get to learn a lot about them. It's like being on a long plane trip. She spoke so much of her sons, how proud she was of them, how she had her career at working, and also how she was so proud of the degree that she received. After walking class, we will go to the Cafe Cartel, and that's where she would share many of her recipes and cooking. I told her once I Googled about which olive oil to use, and she said, "Why? When you have me here. I am the source." So she kept reminding me about olive oil. Dolores' diagnosis was very quick. She shared a good life. She wants to be remembered as she was, not as being sickly. Fortunately for her, she did not suffer long. Last year, we lost another class member, Fred. He was an Italian from New Jersey, I think part of the mafia. And the two of them would always be sparring over their Italian recipes. I can't help but think they're up there smiling down at us, fighting over whose recipe is best. So Dolores, we're very happy you were part of our lives. And with that, I say ciao.
Someone else like to take a moment?
A great group of people, because we all have something in common. I was her neighbor directly to the north, just one doorstep away. My name's Tim, and Dolores was my good fortune. It's great to know her. She taught me patience. I knew that anyone who could live next to my family and boxers, dogs those are, she had to be patient. She was very patient. I learned that just last week from my 27-year-old that 3 years ago, when we were away, my wife and I were away, and he was babysitting the house, and our boxer dog got out. And not only once, but multiple times while he was caring for this dog. The dog, if you've ever seen a boxer, they run, 200 miles an hour, jump 10 feet high. They're crazy. But when I came home, I asked Dolores, how'd everything go? She said, well, the dog got out. We took care of it. But I didn't know it happened multiple times. On one occasion, one afternoon, the dog was out almost all the afternoon, and just the gift of her diligence to see that our dog was cared for. She spent the whole afternoon making sure the dog was tracked down, put behind the fence. This dog didn't live long, but during its short life, I'd see it out in the middle of the day jumping just to clear the fence, just to catch a glimpse of Dolores. Up, and she waved, hi Lennox, hi Lennox. It was such an amazing relationship they had. She cared for the dog, and the dog knew quite well. She was very patient with us. It was great to live next door to her. I'm going to miss her. And I have to say she's one of the most considerate person I've ever met. I watched her reach out to everyone in the neighborhood. She would patiently walk across the street to Eileen's house, bring her the paper for months as she was falling in poor health. Dolores would bring her the paper and go in and talk. It was kind of tough to talk to Eileen, but she was fun anyways. And Dolores would give her the gift of time and be so considerate that her days were numbered, that being Eileen. And then it was just to deliver the paper and she'd come back home again. But I noticed that she walked to just about every doorstep in our little 12 address street of Flower. She was such a great example to me on how to be a good human being, a good neighbor. Again, it is my good fortune to know Dolores. I'll never forget her.
Now, in a moment, I'm going to read a poem, but I want to make sure I'm not overlooking anyone.
I can get over there. I was Dolores' neighbor for 45 years, and I got to know her pretty well. She told me that she was very shy when she was young. And it's very hard to believe nowadays. If she had something to say, she wasn't afraid to say it. Some of the memories I have, there's just too many of them. But years ago, my wife and I invited Dolores and Ruth Easley, and I can remember about 4 other ladies, over for breakfast, not for breakfast, but for coffee on Saturday mornings. And we did that right up until my wife died 10 years ago. And after that, we continued to do it. And it dwindled down to just Ruth and Dolores and I. And we just had a lot of time, a lot of fun together. A lot of discussion, mostly between Ruth and her. I just listened. But politically, we were opposites. And she said, Dolores said, I'll never listen to or see Fox News. I don't know. Every time I would come home, we lived right across our